Welcome back to another episode of B2B Brew powered by Oracle. I'm your host, Joe Escobedo, and very excited today. We have Theresa Sidhu, who is the head of brand marketing at Singlife, as well as Lisa Collins, who is a customer experience strategy director, APAC at Oracle. First question I'd love to get your thoughts on is what's a commonly held belief in your industry that you passionately disagree?
The key thing for me has always been the fact that you can't pull a brand apart. So a logo always has to stay within its frame and things like that. And as I've worked on so many brands, I think what I've come to realize is the logo is only just one part of it. People don't remember your brand for the logo. And look at what Starbucks did. They pulled out the mermaid. Apple often just uses that apple. It's actually what you put in front of the customer in terms of creative, in terms of what you say and what you do. That is what people remember. So for me, I will put apart the brand every single time I've done that. I have taken icons and put them elsewhere. And as long as you're consistent in your tone, as long as you're consistent in your customer experience, which I'm sure Lisa would agree with, you actually will have a brand that people can relate with and also resonate as well.
Definitely consistency is something that is critical. I know that in April this year, Tiffany's had a little April Fool's joke that they said they were going to change their color from Tiffany's blue to yellow, and there was freak out from all the people I know who love Tiffany. So consistency absolutely is critical. I'd say that a commonly held belief in my industry, coming from Oracle, we have all of our solutions have a really deep foundation in data. And in my career, I started off as a digital analyst way back in the day. So one of the things that I found over and over again is that people think they need to capture all the data to get all the value. And also that all the data has to be 100% accurate and precise for it to be valuable. What I've found, especially working in the digital space, is that the trend of the data and how things are progressing is one of the most important things I always look for in terms of growing performance of a business and growing engagement with customers. Starting with the data strategy before you plan all the data you're going to gather, it's one of the most way so you can actually help your team to derive insight to better serve your customers and to create campaigns that are going to resonate with them rather than starting with what is all data we can gather and how do we get it.
Um,
Can I jump in a little
yes,
here? I think you've hit the nail on the head as well, Lisa. I think one of the things I keep telling the team as well sometimes is we don't have to hit perfection. We just have to hit enough for us to get out there. And you'll never hit perfection because there's so much data out there. How in the world do you even synthesize everything? So I think in real time now and the way things work so quickly, perfection has basically gone out.
Absolutely.
yeah, no, I gotta agree with both of you. Absolutely. That's one of the exciting things about being in digital marketing is you have so much data that you can learn from, but you also get to experiment, fail quickly, see what works. So I think some really good points kicking us off already. Once again, over to Teresa again, you've always been someone who's done things a little bit outside the box, a little bit creatively. So once again, I'd love to get your thoughts on what is something everyone is trying to do that you discovered maybe a different way of doing.
Ooh, a tough one there. So I think it's probably not just me that's trying to resolve this. We often have challenges with brand health tracking. And one of the things I have never got around is the fact that we've come so far. And in the last 20 years, we still haven't figured out how to track brands. And a lot of times we're still relying on old methods, spontaneous awareness, top of mind awareness. I may be aware of your brand, but it may not be something that I associate with or I find relevant. So there is no impact on the brand at the end of the day. So one of the things I'm actually trying to do is figure out from a brand health tracking perspective, what are the data points, what are the touch points that actually can then reflect the strength of the brand. So from a CX perspective, using RMPS or using what people are actually saying about the brand, how they feel about it, yeah, and also coming back down to how people interact with us, whether it's on our website, whether it's on an app, all these things add up to your brand strength. And I think the biggest thing for me now is actually looking at sentiment. And sentiment online is really interesting, not just great for marketing, it's actually great for understanding where your brand sits in the whole competitive landscape. People are just so open about how they feel when they're online and they tell you like it is. So if we can find a way to track all of this, put the big picture together with all the little data points and touch points we have, we could potentially crack it. It's a real tough one. I do have an idea right now that I'm trying to work on. I'm hoping, Joe, that I'll have it soon. And when I do, I will share that.
Awesome. No, excited to hear that. I think this is a common challenge amongst a lot of different organizations. Lisa, I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether it's something you're doing at Oracle or some of the work you're doing with clients. How are you addressing these kind of challenges?
One of the first stories that actually came to mind around this question was Oracle's own experience internally with trying out new ways of generating business. In a B2B business, we want to generate leads that we can then speak to prospects and opportunities and turn them into customers. Previously, how we used to look at that is we would take a very traditional view of the business. So we would look at more of a gut feel. What are the industries we want to target? What is the kind of customer we want to target? What do we think based on our past experience? Our data signals we should latch on to prioritize who our top leads will actually be. What we did a couple of years ago is we went through an exercise where we moved more towards a data-driven approach to lead scoring and to identify who we should prioritize to speak to first. And it was based on machine learning. It went through an entire pilot project. And when we first came to trial it out with the business, what we found was that people really struggled to try something new. They struggled to really believe in this machine learning model. They felt that their own experience was what they should rely on more on data. And so when we actually decided to pilot it out, we began to see our leads converting at double the rate that they used to. We saw much greater progression of opportunities within the business and a much faster revenue stream that we could drive. What we leveraged is we took our expertise in data and our expertise in machine learning. And we really tried something new when it comes to driving B2B revenue and B2B leads. And it's been really successful for us so far.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very exciting. Yeah, Teresa, please jump in.
I'm sorry. I think that's the thing with marketing is when it comes to data, we have so much of it. I always struggle with brand though, because it is not something that's tangible and it's impacted by a whole bunch of things. It's impacted by what people say about it. It's impacted by your own experiences. So actually, I would be interested also at some point, maybe connecting with Lisa and then figuring out how would you actually track brand? How would you attribute spend to it? Because brand is becoming more and more critical to businesses. And I think with COVID's also shown us that you need that strong brand, you need that strong relevance and that resonance. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind as well. So it's a hard one to crack. So I'm really curious if anybody has solutions.
Yeah, I think that that's a great question. And so, the data coming out of our region in particular in Southeast Asia is really interesting when it comes to brand, because I think there was a stat that said something like 40 or 42% of people were more likely to trust and buy from an established brand online. And these are often people who previously, before the pandemic, were purchasing offline. We had 40 million new people trying out new digital services across Southeast Asia in the last year alone. And so it really helps to demonstrate the value of brand in a very immediate sense. And I think the challenge with data is people tend to focus on the data that they have. But the challenge, exactly as you said, when it comes to brand, is that we don't have as much direct data to rely on. And so oftentimes I'll have people asking me the question is, how important is branding versus performance marketing? And I come from a classically trained marketing background. So for me, it's absolutely essential that businesses understand the power that both branding and performance marketing have and the role that they have to play with each other. And what I'm hoping that we begin to see is that performance marketing can perhaps, and more of the CX data driven side of our businesses, can maybe find new data signals to inform the brand marketers who are working to rebuild and craft the overall experience for a brand.
Absolutely. I love the reason for this conversation is that we're coming up with so many different ideas for common challenges. So this is great so far. Um, Teresa, I know your organization has been going through a transformation in the past year or so. So I'd love to hear about what are some of the biggest challenges that you and your team have solved, say, over the past year, or at least are working on.
So I think it's now common knowledge that Singlife and Aviva Singapore are merging. And part of that is really working on the brand. And I am so excited about that. You just imagine the possibilities. So we're trying to bring two brands together. We haven't cracked this yet. I don't really have success stories yet, but we're in progress. And its biggest challenge I've learned over the last year has been culture. And I know it seems obvious, right? Like you've got two very different teams coming together. You're definitely going to be impacted by culture. But culture to me also comes down to not just ways of working, but levels of understanding. So where before I could just rattle off something and then walk away, I've also realized now with a much bigger organization, I can't do that anymore. And I really have to take people on a journey. I have to sit with them, explain it to them. And it's interesting because it takes me back to my days with Hertz, where I got from London with the mayor's office, because that was exactly what I was doing. And then you get so wrapped up in your job, working with different people, you forget the basics. So I believe my biggest learning has been what Sherlock Holmes has always said, which is it's elementary. And basically, it is going back to the basics. And when you go back to the basics, you can then start to see gaps. And when you see gaps, you can then help to fill them and you can take people along on the journey. I think without that, just jumping into big picture, we will struggle. The merger has really been interesting. It's been exciting. I don't think I've been in mergers before, but I've not experienced one where it's two of the same coming together, but with slightly different capabilities and even brand awareness levels are different. So how do you merge the two together? How do you bring two brands together that are quite distinct and at the same time the same?
Absolutely. And I'm going to steal that Sherlock Holmes line from you because I'm a big believer in going back to the basics as well. So very practical insights there. Lisa, I'd love to hear your thoughts from your point of view. What are some of the ways in which you've seen different companies work around different cultures or around, as Teresa was talking about, filling some of the gaps?
So I'd say one of the challenges that CEOs across the region are speaking to us about is how to find high value audiences in the most profitable ways. And one of the ways that we're finding a lot of success is through loyalty programs. So typically loyalty programs have been a pretty standard approach to buying something, earning points, burning your points. But what a lot of modern loyalty programs are doing is they are using their programs to really encourage engagement at different levels of the business. So what they refer to as brand valuable behavior. And this could look like referring somebody or referring a friend, or it could be watching a new piece of content or buying a product through a new channel that they've never actually bought it through before. And we have a lot of customers globally like Lego and Disney that are using loyalty to grab and hold the attention of people based on what they understand about who they are. That is based on data, not only that's the behavior that they're seeing on digital channels, but also on what these people are telling them is important to them. And of course, one of the first things that CMOs will ask me when I speak to them is how do we deal with the third party cookies going away? Now it's been pushed back a little bit, which is great. It gives us more time to deal with and manage that. But loyalty is one of the first places we can look to understand and uncover where high value customers are and what those signals are that we could use to then leverage our personalization programs to help identify and find those people and bring them into our. The second thing that we're also looking at is contextual capabilities when it comes to advertising and paid media. So Oracle has a dedicated ad tech that works very closely with the advertising technologists across the industry that is looking for ways to help solve for how do we target audiences, how do we manage attribution. This data goes away and suddenly there's a big gap in terms of our understanding where we should spend our budgets and how we find the most valuable people for us.
Absolutely. And I was lighting up when you're talking about a rewards program because I think it's just in a former life, something that Teresa and I worked quite a lot on. Teresa, if you want to jump in there and share any of your experience or insights on this, it'd be great.
I actually do agree with Lisa. I think loyalty programs need to change. Frankly, sometimes I'm not sure they work anymore. And partly because I have so many of them and I don't even bother with them anymore. I've seen instances when I've gone shopping where people will go, I really don't care if I have the card or not. I don't care. Partly because there is no discount. If there is a direct benefit, absolutely. But if it's just collecting points, I've seen people go, it's fine. I don't need that. So it needs to change. And also, what does loyalty actually mean in this day and age? Because I'm going to switch around as a consumer. The minute something goes wrong with the brand or the minute I'm not happy with something, I will switch whatever amount of points you give me. So I think we also need to rethink what loyalty actually means to people. It's no longer just about points or discounts and things like that. And ultimately, it has to have a benefit. So if I have a really bad experience with a brand, am I actually going to come back even if you give me a discount? The answer is probably no. So loyalty probably has to be seen in a much wider viewpoint. And I'm sure Lisa will agree as well. From a customer experience perspective, that's really where we need to get it. That's where loyalty actually counts as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a great example of a couple of customers that we've worked with that creatively innovative loyalty programs are ones that looked at what are experiences that are one of a kind and you can offer to people that really, like really delights them. It doesn't just pay lip service to what loyalty actually is. So an example was AMC's The Walking Dead, so the zombie program in the US. So they had a loyalty rewards program where they encouraged people, first of all, to watch the program live. So they could earn, so as they were watching the program, it will come and pop up and they would put it into their loyalty program. And they would earn 100 points for entering into it as the program was flighting, and then 50 points 2 hours later. And that decreased until 2 days later, it wouldn't apply anymore. So they were really encouraging this behavior, like people watching. They encourage people to post on social media as well. And then when it came to the rewards, actually to be an extra in the show. So imagine this, you're a massive fan, you're really engaging in this loyalty program, and then you get enough points that you can actually go and get dressed up for the day as a zombie, stumble your way across the field, maybe try and bite somebody. And it was just super exciting. And what was also great about that is that's kind of content that you can create that is really engaging to share with other people. So it's not just about that one person who gets rewarded. It's this really feel good experience that you can share across your wider audiences. I think innovation and really thinking about crafting an experience for customers is really important when it comes to creating a loyalty experience that is next level. But then I can also look at just the data that we have today. I was listening to an example of, I think it was Matahari, the department stores in Indonesia. When everything closed down, they actually had to look at how they could continue to drive revenue, but for a business that wasn't traditionally very digital facing. So what they did, and I really love this examples because they had their store associates who they actually brought back into the store. They did live streaming to drive live e-commerce, like live commerce essentially. And they also used their loyalty program to target people who had the app that was in a particular area around a particular store, and they matched them to the products that they actually had in store. And they did this, it was really had to figure it out as they went along. They didn't have time to implement anything really new, but it was a way of using loyalty data to drive innovation and new ways to get into market and pinch, and things suddenly change. And you need to make it happen.
It's interesting because I think it's the whole right audience, right time, and right incentive. I would have loved to have been a zombie.
Don't make me the three. I just want to be like drooling my way.
Absolutely, I second that, and I think it goes back to customer experience is a common term now, but what is the actual experience? I think the Walking Dead one is that's a one in a kind experience that you can't get anywhere else. So the fact that they have those assets, they have that thing that they can build out, and then to your point, building the content around that. So like behind the scenes, someone transforming from a normal person to an extra on a big show, going through the makeup, going through the entire process, having them on. I think it'd be incredibly fun to do and also to watch as a fan of the show. So I love that story personally. I think that's great. One thing I'd love to get your thoughts on, let's find out a little bit more about you on the personal side. Teresa, you talked about some of your experience at Hertz, and I know you have a very diverse background. So I'd love to hear from your point of view. What's the biggest obstacle that you faced in your career?
So I'm probably going to show my age here, but I have been doing this for the past 20 years or so. And when I started in my career, I made a conscious decision that I would move from industry to industry. And hence, I've not been in the same industry twice, apart from hospitality and insurance. And I've fallen in love with insurance, especially. So I'm going to stay. I think 20 years ago, if you would have asked someone about brand marketing and their experience and capabilities, they would probably have asked you for relevant experience. And I face that all the time. But I persevered partly because I felt like my skills were transferable and I didn't want to get stuck. I didn't want to get stuck in the same industry, the same way of doing things. And a lot of what I learned, I've actually managed to apply across the board. So, hospitality, for example, and Joe, this has taught me so much about brand standards and governance, and they are so amazing at it, at keeping things consistent. And I've applied a lot of this in my life with insurance, and that's come to fruition as well. So there is a lot that you can learn going from industry to industry. But at the same time, it was a struggle. Nobody really wanted to hire me because I was always the new person in the industry and in the office and always had to be taken up to speed. But you also learn to adapt. So a lot of my skill sets in terms of dealing with ambiguity, dealing with change, and being able to adapt have actually come from moving from industry to industry because you just have to get yourself to that level equal to everyone else if you want to get your job done. And what it's also helped me do is not just apply my knowledge, but also bring a fresh perspective in. And I enjoy that. I like working on different brands. I like bringing new perspectives in. And yeah, and basically growing the brand up to its fullest.
Absolutely. You have been very adaptable over the years. And if I heard that correctly, you've been working for 20 years. So you must have started when you were 5 years old. Is that
You're just being very kind.
I speak the truth. We were talking about this off camera. I speak the truth. But Lisa, the same question for you. I'd love to hear about what's been the biggest challenge in your career and how you overcame it.
So I love what you said, Teresa, about being adaptable. I have, as you can probably tell from my accent, it's about that weird kind of accent that you get when you spend too long out of your home country. I'm originally from South Africa and I've lived and worked in many different countries over the course of my career. And so one of the biggest challenges I've had is moving to a new country or a new city and kind of building up my networks and also finding people that inspire me. So it's really important for me to be around, work around people who are always looking to expand what's possible in their lives. Doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be only focused on their career or they're really focused on one particular thing. It's people who are really always looking for possibility. And typically there seem to be people who are fairly adaptable and people who are willing to take on new challenges and opportunity where perhaps other people see challenges. So yeah, so I think that for me, like finding and connecting with my kind of group and trying to find those people in the cities that I moved to has been a challenge. And one of the ways that I've worked around that is really actively asking for and looking for mentoring and mentorship opportunities. I always feel like people who want to learn and grow are looking for other people to learn from and to share their knowledge as well. So yeah, that for me has been a real kind of focus in my life. And something that somebody said yesterday actually that I heard when it comes to your career is really looking at what is it that you can bring to the world that is something that only you can do? So not necessarily focusing on the things that everybody else is doing or the things that maybe you're not that passionate about, but really looking at who are you as a person and what can you bring that is your greatest expression of yourself in the world. I always find, yeah, something that really inspires.
I love that. I love that idea of bringing passion to the table. I think I'm kind of that. We were having this chat with amongst my friends, and when you're young, your motivations are always different. You want to climb that ladder, and you're ambitious. Everything else comes into play. I think now what I want to do is live my passion, and that lies with brand. So everything else doesn't really come into play anymore. As long as I'm comfortable and I'm happy doing what I'm doing, then that's the test of I'm in the right role. I want to be happy every morning when I turn this laptop on. And so far, it has been a good journey. So, yeah.
Also from I want to be happy every morning when I get up and I go to work, and that's just when I turn the laptop on.
The commute is really short now. So, yeah.
I think s- I think this is great advice. And Lisa, I can relate to you as someone who has spent half my life overseas. When I talk to Americans now, they're asking me where are you from because I guess my accent. I thought it was American, but apparently when they hear it, they're like, I can't tell where you're from. I'm like, I've been overseas for way too long, so I could definitely relate to that.
We're children of the world. That's what I say because absolutely same. Spent a lot of time in the UK and my accent goes on and off. And sometimes I don't know what I sound like.
I'd say same here. Absolutely. Teresa and Lisa, it's been an absolute pleasure. There's been so many practical tips and great stories along the way as well, too. So I really appreciate you guys coming on the show. And for everyone watching and listening, please feel free to share this episode. There's so many great tips in there. I'm sure your bosses and peers will love it. So thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everyone.